Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, the big health increase that we got with Season 2 Reloaded ended up changing a lot when it comes to the meta. Having 300 health versus 250 equates to a couple of more shots to kill on essentially every single weapon in the game. So with that being said, today I wanted to break down some of the fastest TTK weapons in the game specifically for 300 health. What weapons are really going to excel with this new TTK, the new shots to kill required in most situations. As we go through it all, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, you already know every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD, news, updates, loadouts, tips. You're going to find it all right here. So feel free to subscribe with those post notifications turned on. So the first gun I want to talk about is actually the Vargo 52. Honestly, I don't think many players expected this gun to be all that good, seeing as it was introduced during Vanguard's era of content, but it's a Cold War gun, right? But lo and behold, this thing is actually very, very solid. Obviously, it's had a lot of issues with it, with the blueprint not working, the reload not working, but when it comes to the raw stats, this thing and the Cold War AK are like right there with one another. They are very good. When it comes to having 300 health, this thing actually has a sub 700 millisecond TTK through about 40 meters, which is really, really good, especially for like sniper support. That's insanely good stats. Over range, though, it's also very good as well. As far as the setup goes here, of course, first up, we are going for the Groove Suppressor, helping maintain that control while also giving us better velocity and better range. For the barrel here, for most builds, you probably want to go for Task Force, more velocity, more control, more range yet again. For specifically sniper support, you could easily get away with using something like the Takedown barrel, even the Liberator barrel, or even VDV reinforced. All those are great for sniper support as well. For a general build, though, I feel like Task Force is definitely the most consistent. Of course, we're going for the Spetsnaz grip as always. Alongside, I would say the 60 round mags personally, especially with 300 health. 45 is pushing it in some cases, especially if you're fighting, you know, 1-on-2, maybe 1-on-3 even. That's not a ton of ammo, and that reload might cause you to, you know, get taken out. So 60 is a nice, safe bet there. Then lastly, I go for the 3x optic per usual. Pretty standard Cold War setup, but definitely very, very solid with the 300 health. Another weapon that we've talked about quite a bit actually recently since this update was implemented is the AMAX. This thing has really been brought back into the top meta conversation because it has an insane TTK with that extra 50 health in play. It actually beats out the Bren and the Cold War AK over range, two of the top weapons in the game as we know. The downside here is that it is obviously limited to just 45 rounds. Luckily, it doesn't have an insanely fast fire rate, so you can get away with having the smaller mag. In this case, it is still pushing it for sure, but it's not the end of the world. And that is really, like I said, the main drawback here. Outside of this, the AMAX is an absolute beast right now, and I really expect a lot of players to start running this in the coming weeks, as it clearly is a highlight weapon when it comes to having a good TTK with the new health and with the new TTK in general with Warzone. Obviously, we're running the 45 round mags alongside the Commando foregrip on there as well. Gonna go ahead and run Monolithic Suppressor and of course the Zodiac barrel per usual, no changes there. And lastly, we got the VOK 3x optic. We got to go ahead, throw on that T-pose reticle. Basic AMAX setup that we've been using for literally almost 2 years at this point. It gets the job done though. This thing absolutely fries. Now, a weapon you might not think of when you're like, all right, what are the top TTK weapons in the game right now? The PKM. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, not a ton though, because it's not a super popular weapon, but the stats speak for themselves. Sure, it's a little slow. It's got a bad reload. That's an LMG for you. Surprise, surprise. The TTK here, though, is so close to the Brens in so many different ways, and in a lot of ways, it's actually easier to use. The recoil is not nearly as sporadic with the left and right and horizontal movement. It's very basic. It actually has a sub 700 millisecond TTK through about 50 meters, so that's pretty solid. And then after that, it's right there like the Bren, the Cold War AK, so on and so forth. So it is definitely a top tier weapon when it comes to having a fast TTK over range. Absolutely love that. And anytime we can talk about an MW weapon, it's a good time, right? Here, of course, we're going for the Monolithic Suppressor alongside the extended barrel. Something I love about the PKM is the snatch grip because it's the best of both worlds. Better control and a better ADS. You'll love to see it. I also run the VOK 3x optic on here as well. You have a large base magazine by default, so I don't think you have to go for an extended mag here. You could go for maybe a stipple grip tape if you wanted to, but considering this is a ranged gun, Mobility is not a huge priority. I feel like tac laser is a good option because it is going to help out with aiming stability, but also a slightly better ADS. None of the stocks really stand out to me. Sleight of hand I don't think would be a bad choice here either though, because obviously that reload is a little bit slower. So personally I'd go between sleight of hand and a tac laser for that 5th attachment, but in general this thing's stats, like I said, really do speak for themselves. It is a very, very powerful weapon. Now you've heard me talking about it all throughout the video. Yes, the Cold War AK is still a top tier gun as well, especially with this new increased health. Obviously the Bren is too. Spoiler alert, we're not talking about the Bren in a loadout in this video. It's boring. It's gonna get nerfed. They've already confirmed that, so I'd rather not focus on a gun that we know is going to be changed and nerfed in the future. The Cold War AK though, it's been a beast for months and months and months and seasons and seasons and seasons. No change here in the setup, and really no change in its overall effectiveness with 300 health either. Groove suppressor, RPK barrel, going for the Spetsnaz grip as well. The 60 round mags again I think is probably the safer way to go, especially if you're playing in duos, trios, quads for sure. And then the 3x optic per usual. Still one of my favorite guns in the game, and absolutely still one of the best guns and most versatile guns in the game as well. And then to close things out, we got the biggest curveball imaginable, the SVT, a sub 700 millisecond TTK through 60 meters. There's an asterisk here though. This is not an easy gun to use. Just like the FAL, it requires a high skill player to really maximize and capitalize on its effectiveness. But if you are a good player, if you have really good recoil control, really good accuracy, and a good trigger finger, this is one of the best guns in the game. Very high risk, very high reward, but I didn't want to skip over something as dominant as this is with the TTK that it has over that range, just because it's a little bit harder. We've talked about the FAL before. We've talked about other difficult weapons. I'd highly recommend sort of testing it out and seeing if you can do well with this gun, because it will pay off in game. First up here, I think going for the AMAX silencer is probably your best bet. It hurts the ADS a little bit, but when you spam that, you're going to notice more control. So getting that vertical and horizontal control there is pretty big. For the barrel here, the 800 millimeter is very slow. It also hurts the fire rate a little bit. It is going to give you better velocity and better control and a larger one-hit kill area, or a larger crit area essentially. So I don't think that's a bad option. The custom one, not it, hurts velocity. Same deal with the 400. The precision is more of like your basic barrel option. I think it's the more well-rounded one. It's only hurting ADS but giving you better control, better recoil recovery too, which is huge. So I think that one is really the clear choice. You could always mess around with the 800 though. I don't think that's an awful decision. For the optic here, I think you're going safe with whatever you're comfortable with, whether that is a 2.5 times, whether that's a 3 to 6, which is what personally I'm going to go ahead and use here. I think it just comes down to finding a balance between something you can use for some close range fights, because it has a good TTK there too, and over range as well. You want to be accurate obviously, so use an optic that you are familiar with and comfortable with. For the stock here, there's honestly quite a few good options. I wouldn't use removed for one, but weighted here, better accuracy, better control, better flinch resistance. That's not a bad choice. The crown, better recoil recovery and initial firing recoil, also very good. Hatted's not as ideal as it is in other situations. Personally, I feel like weighted or the crown are probably your best bets here. The first one also is not really all that ideal. So really, Empress or Crown, if you want recoil recovery so it sort of recenters a little bit easier, go for that. If you just want good recoil control, go for weighted. For the underbarrel here, personally I feel like hand stop is always a good choice, as is Carver. The thing here though is hand stop hurts hip fire, and we're not doing that here, so you don't really have any real cons with that. For the magazine, I feel like you're gonna have the most success just using a 20 round extended mag. 20 rounds, obviously not a lot. There's not really many large mag capacities here, but it's semi-auto, so that's what sort of gets it out of that small mag niche when it comes to not being usable with 300 health. 20 rounds on a semi-auto gun is, I feel like, more than enough in most situations, so that's personally what I would recommend there. For the ammo, absolutely going for lengthened. Also for the rear grip, I feel like polymer, you could always go with that. It's never a bad choice, but stippled in this case with the recoil recovery could also be very good as well, because it's going to have that recentering factor. So that's really clutch, in my opinion, really crucial. So choose between those. I'd recommend testing out them both and seeing which one feels better to you. I feel like most players will probably be more accurate with the stippy on there though. Perk 1, really not a ton of great options here. I mean, unmarked is pretty useless here. Vital, as we've talked about before, is not worth it. Perfectionist for some recoil control is all right. Focus for flinch resistance could be usable. Shrouded, we don't really need. And refresh, faster reload when injured. Like, all these are not that great. Focus or Perfectionist would probably be my choices, but there's no real great option there. And of course, fully loaded or on hand for that faster ADS. Both of those are great choices too. But yeah, the SVT, absolute beast when it comes to a fast TTK. And I know you weren't expecting that one, but that said, that is gonna wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here, or if you have not already subscribed, every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD. So feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.